Welcome to another edition of Preaching Pointers. And on this occasion, we'd just like to look at an introduction or an example of an introduction. And this comes from Ecclesiastes and chapter 1. And when you go to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, you will find that it begins the words of the preacher. And so we actually have a preacher's introduction, a sermon introduction. And Solomon is the one who is either actually speaking or being recorded as speaking. And he begins by this opening statement, which is quite powerful and attention grabbing, because he says, "Vanity of vanity," says the preacher, "vanity of vanities, all is vanity." And so here was this king who had everything. If you were aspiring to have wealth and possessions and being able to enjoy whatever pleasures were available to you in life, this was the king, this was the man who had it all. This was the man who people dreamt of being. This was the man who people dreamt of having his possessions and in his wealth and his opportunity to experience all sorts of different pleasures in life. But he comes and he says to them, it's all vain, it's all empty, it's all pointless. None of it is of substance. He goes on here to mention in verse 3 about, what's the point of putting all the work in, all the effort in? What does it actually gain you in the end? And perhaps there were those who were listening to these words or reading these words and were thinking, well, that's how I'm hoping that I will get some wealth. That's how I'm hoping I might have access to some of the pleasures that are available into this world. If I put the effort in and will be able to gain things and experience things, then that will satisfy me. But Solomon, who had all these things, was saying this was not the case. In fact, he goes on to say in the next few verses that the only thing really guaranteed in life are nature's natural rhythms. Outside of that, there is nothing really that is guaranteed. And he says, just like the sea, all the streams and rivers flow into it, and it never seems to be full, never seems to be satisfied. In the same way, man might try all sorts of different things, seek after wealth, seek after pleasure, but actually at the end of the day, none of those things will give him rest. None of those things will satisfy. And in fact, he sort of finishes his opening remarks by saying, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything has been tried. People might think, well, if I try it, I'll get satisfaction out of it. Well, Solomon says, no, all these things have been tried. There's nothing new. The result seems to be the same. It never actually ends up satisfying. People don't seem to learn that lesson. And for those who are perhaps pinning their hopes, working their socks off, so to speak, in order to try and gain wealth, gain possessions, experience pleasures, in the hope that it would give them rest and satisfaction, the man who had tried it all in this introduction powerfully pulls that carpet, as it were, from under their feet and says, it doesn't work. What you're hoping for, what you're pinning your hopes on, will not ultimately satisfy or fulfill you. And so in terms of an introduction, that's a very powerful introduction, a very attention-grabbing introduction, as he makes particularly that opening statement backed up by some of his subsequent thoughts that really pulls the rug, as it were, pulls the carpet from under the feet of his listeners or readers and makes them sit up and think, well, what does satisfy then? Where can I find rest? And perhaps grabs their attention to keep listening for the answer to where we can find satisfaction and for where we can find rest. So there's just an example of a sermon introduction with a powerful opening statement backed up by some subsequent thoughts, which really grabs the attention of the listener and makes them think. So I hope just thinking about that was of some help to you as you consider your own introductions. And if you found this helpful, then please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening.